Howdy there, YouTube. Back here again with another video about this particular photograph. Photograph number 98093 from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. And I was having a little trouble sleeping last night thinking about some of the various problems that I had dealing with this photograph in this particular book. And these drawn-in figures that appear in this illustration in this 1943 copyrighted book. And there's a chronology of events in this book that ends in December 30th of 1943. So it's probably published first couple months of 1944 would be the earliest date. So I was having trouble figuring out how there was all these different multiple variations with the cropping of the photograph, because this is bordered actually in the photograph that was recovered, whereas this one has an extra layer, an extra inch or so on the top and bottom to give a little bit more detail, particularly to the background. There's what appears to be something sticking up from one of the buildings back here that you can barely make out in this picture, which is not available information in this picture. So this kind of just looks like woods. So I had to make a timeline to figure out these variations of this photograph. So September, invasion of Poland happens. December 1st, white armbands are required for all Jews in Bochnia, the town where this massacre happened. And in none of the photographs of the three that I could find do white armbands appear on any of the participants, including the corpses or any of the people helping dig the grave. So December 16th, 1939 is when this event is supposed to have occurred, and that's also shown in the documents from the the Holocaust Memorial Museum. It's shown here as 16th December. And I noticed that there was a variation on the dates, and so I was able to find in a primary document here diaries from World War II, where this Janine Phillips in Poland writes about on the 16th of December 1939. When I got up this morning and looked out, I was dazed by the glistening glory. 10 centimeters of snow fell during the night, and it seemed so fluffy and light as a duck's down. After a hasty breakfast, I went outside to marvel at and to touch the snow. So prior to 16 December 1939, there was no snow on the ground. So clearly, this was probably taken sometime during the 16th of December 1939. During that event, the original photos were taken at the execution site. Intermediate to that, we have no idea what happened, but at some point somebody got a hold of that original set of photographs and made copies. So the originals were given to the person that took the photos, possibly a propaganda company, possibly just a private citizen. It's really hard to say because we don't know. But those original photographs probably died with the owner previous to the end of the war. That's just going to be something that I conjecture. And this is all conjecture, by the way. All this could be complete BS. It's up to you to make up your mind. This is just what I've kind of come to the conclusion. Anyway, previous to 1943, to the publication of the book, the Nazi flyer copy, based on the text underneath this photograph, it was recovered from a Nazi flyer in England, was recovered, and so that is what I'm calling the Nazi flyer copy. And at some point it was altered, maybe by this European photo stock company, possibly by another person, previous to its inclusion in this book. And as far as I know, that's the only place that it occurs. So this European stock company maybe had an unmodified version also that was printed in a different publication. So another copy that was found is our other copy, which was marked with the Jewish Council of Katowice. And that copy was the one that was recovered by Jacob Ingra in the briefcases after the war. And that appears in the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum Collection. Now there's another version online that has a Corbis watermark on it. And the timeline for that copy would coexist with the Bettman archives. And the Bettman arrived in the U.S. in 1935 with his suitcase, so there's no way that it could have been included with those original photographs. So they were likely either collected during the time that he was collecting, or it was collected when he placed his ads in the periodicals and magazines. And the Bettman archives were purchased in '52, so he placed ads in the '40s and post-war period. So it's possible that his copy could be either a Nazi flyer copy, or it could be another third version of this photograph that isn't one of these other two. So that just kind of was the conclusions that I came to as far as the lineage of the different, how they appeared different, while they still all could be authentic photographs. And with the events that were happening in Poland, it's not without the realm of possibility that the one that ended up in the Jacob Ingra collection was passed through several hands before it got to the final album, if you know what I mean. That Civil Resistance, it was a copy of a copy of a copy, even though in some respects it's a better quality. Some of the details are better quality than this original, so maybe it was taken from the original negative. That's what I'm looking for. So anyway, I have a couple of other observations that I'd like to include in this video, so I will set them up. And so I felt I needed to touch a little bit on the rifles that appear in these photographs, with the straight bolt and the chunk of wood behind the rear sight, as appear on these photographs fairly clearly. All three of these bolts are straight bolt Czechoslovakian 24Ts, as appear in this book here. And you can see, here's an example to show. It's got the straight bolt, Czechoslovakia made. It's got the extra chunk of wood behind the rear sight, which really doesn't mean anything other than it shows that these are SIPO or SD, Sicherheitsdienst, or Sicherheitspolizei troops, so not frontline troops. Not that that matters. These people are still not alive because of what these guys did. And you can see that these two guys are close together, and when I first saw that I thought maybe it was a double negative, them stacking guys on top of each other because of the printed men. But on this photograph there's two guys and two guys. The other side's cropped off. If you saw the first video, I explained that. So a lot of credence to the fact that all three of these photographs are related, as I showed in the first video, that these men here digging are these men over to the side in this photograph. So what I'd like to do is try to determine if my theory about the location is correct. So I'm going to use this helmet to run an experiment with this solar panel locating device and a map. So I'll set that up. Stay tuned. So this is where I believe the massacre to have taken place. It is only a guess, as I previously mentioned. There's also this kind of part coming out of the top of the building. And as you can see, some of the perspectives and some of the landscape tie together. This berm here, the trees, even this bush, even though it's partially kind of obscured by the smoke, the bush is actually still there. So if we look at this map, which is looking this way, from here. So this car would be right about here. There's a small park, child's park here presently. And you can see that there's kind of a corner around here, which is also present in this photograph. There's nothing behind here. So the person that was taking this photograph ostensibly then would be standing probably right against the front of this house, facing this up this direction. Whereas in this photograph, the person's looking from a different perspective. So they're most likely standing probably here or to the right of this building here. So these buildings here are these buildings right here. This looks like more of a modern building, so it probably wasn't there at the time, and that's why it doesn't show up. It would probably be standing somewhere over here, even though you can't see it because it's obscured by vegetation here. Anyway, so this here is the scale, the trajectory of the sun, and it's aligned with north. I've aligned both this compass and this mark so that looking here with the same helmet, kind of looking in this direction towards the hill. If we project this arc onto the helmet, it starts in the east and goes to the west, sets in the west. So the arc would start on this edge of the helmet, progress around the front, and then come back to this side. So of course we don't know if these are reverse negative or if they're flip-flopped or how they're projected. And it almost looks like these are two different angles, and that could be one explanation. But based on having this bright spot here, it would correlate to sometime in the afternoon on this scale. Of course, it's not scientific, but just gives me a rough idea when perhaps this photograph was taken. And there's a lot of reflections. There's also some landscape details that could have caused some of the reflections. In this Jacob Ingra photograph, there's no detail here, but you can see here that there is a slope up in this direction. At least that's what it appears to show, which isn't apparent in here. But in the landscape, there is some definite changes in direction coming off each side of the house. So hopefully this small investigation into this questionable photograph reveals some detail of the event and somewhat of the history behind this mysterious photograph. Still not quite sure what these two guys are doing here or how they got there, but hopefully in some future research I can dig deeper and find some answers as far as where these two men came from. So I would like to thank you for watching, and I really would like you to think about the events that happened in Poland to the occupied population and support anyone that prevents that kind of thing from happening again. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.